Not so far classic is down. Spin it around. Okay, Tov. Now that I can see you. So we went into the 9 days. We're talking about the halachot of the 3 weeks, the 9 days. Let's focus a little bit on Tisha B'Av itself now, which is coming up very, very soon. And the first thing to say is that Tisha B'Av, as we know, is different to the other fasts. It's more stringent than the other fasts of the Churban that we have. Rabbi writes here, now, 3 primary differences between Tisha B'Av and the other minor fasts. Right, number 1, as we know, that Tzom Tisha B'Av nimshachim mamash lema. It's for a full period of night and day. Mishkiat hachama ve'atzet hakochavim, meaning from Shkia on Motzei Shabbat in this case until Tzet hakochavim the following night, and whereas the other Tzomot Kalim are only during the daytime from Amud HaShachar. There is no, waking up early in the morning on Tisha B'Av to have a snack before you begin your fast, because you've already begun the fast the night before. And as we mentioned last time, there's a little bit of a tension this year how exactly that begins, because from Shkia until Tzeit HaKochavim on Motzei Shabbat, on the one hand, it's still Shabbat, but we already have to begin fasting. So at that point, anything that we have to do, any public signs of mourning, we don't do until after Shabbat goes out. So we'll stop eating just before Shkia, and we'll say Birkat HaMazon as well. But changing one's shoes, for example, one would keep one's Shabbat shoes on until Tzeit HaKochavim, and at that point, one would say Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol, and then remove one's shoes and change into one's weekday clothes. So that is the first difference, that Tisha B'Av is night and day. The second difference is that Tisha B'Av is not just forbidden for the other fasts. All we can not do is eat and drink. But here we have the Chameshet Inuyim, the 5 Inuyim, similarly to on Yom Kippur. So there's no eating and drinking. There is no washing, which washing refers to washing for pleasure. There is no anointing. There's no wearing shoes, wearing leather shoes, and no marital relations as well. Whereas the other fast days we know is just eating and drinking. And finally, Mitzom Tisha B'Av, like Cholim, Pturim, Ve'ilu Matzomot HaKalim, Gamu Balot U'Menikot Pturot. So when it comes to the other minor fasts, a pregnant woman or one who's feeding, we would not be required to fast. Whereas on Tisha B'Av, we say they would, unless there are reasons, unless one who is ill. Right? And here's the difference between Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. What read it in here? He said, Tzom Tisha B'Av shaveh letzom Yom Kippurim. In many regards, Tisha B'Av is the same as Yom Kippur, in the sense that essentially the 5 Inuyim that we've just mentioned, which Chachamim decreed against on Tisha B'Av, that is the same as the things you can't do on Yom Kippur. However, since Tisha B'Av is a din d'Rabbanan, not a din d'Oraita like Yom Kippur, so it is more lenient in a number of regards. Number 1, Tisha B'Av lo chivu Chachamim et hacholim latzum. Somebody who is ill, somebody who is considered a chole, is not required to fast on Tisha B'Av, should not fast on Tisha B'Av. Because then here people get confused, because on Yom Kippur, it's only somebody who's ill would be required to fast on Yom Kippur, unless it is a question of pikuach nefesh, a question which is going to lead to pikuach nefesh. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not getting into all the ins and outs of it right now, but that is the general principle. Sometimes people think somebody's not feeling well, just a little bit, under the weather, not feeling so well on Yom Kippur, can they eat in Shiurim? Absolutely not. Right? Yom Kippur, it's only if it is related to pikuach nefesh, whereas Tisha B'Av, even when it's not going to be pikuach nefesh at all, but when it's to find a choleh, then one should not fast. Number 2, b'chol makom shel safek, b'tzom Yom Kippurim machmirim, u'b'tzom Tisha B'Av makilim. As we know, the general principle, when we have a safek, we have a case of doubt. We say safek d'oraita lechumra, safek d'Rabbanan lekula. A case of doubt regarding a d'oraita, a Torah matter, we are stringent. That would be Yom Kippur. In a case of doubt regarding a d'Rabbanan, we'd be lenient. However, mitzad acher yeshna chumra b'tzom Tisha B'Av al pnei Yom Kippurim. As we all know, there is a certain stringency, called stringency, but a case where Tisha B'Av is different to Yom Kippur, and that is regarding the minagei and the chiyuvim of avelut. of mourning. Most of these, some of them apply the entire day. Most of these would apply only until Chatzot in the day. But obviously, Yom Kippur is not a day of mourning. It's a day of fasting. It's a day of elevating ourselves spiritually, detaching from the physical. But Tisha B'Av is a day of Avilut. And therefore, as we know, on Tisha B'Av, what do? Yoshvim al haaretz, we sit on the floor, or we sit on low stools or low chairs. Obviously, if one needs to, for health reasons, one's unable to sit on the floor, one needs to sit on a chair, that one can do so. Very, very strange halachot that we have. There are those who are makpid on this the entire year, but we don't greet each other, right? We don't say shalom. See what exactly is considered in shalom, what is considered greeting. At night, by the way, and there's a difference. The halakha of greeting that applies the entire day of Tisha B'Av. We're sitting on the floor is only until chatzot, only until midday. We turn down the lights at night. And one is not allowed to learn Torah, which makes one happy. I mean, most of the sections of Torah we cannot learn. There are many, many sections of Torah that we are allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av. People think there's nothing you can do on Tisha B'Av, you can't learn. If you were just to learn the sections of Torah that you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av, you'd have plenty to do the whole year. But we're allowed to learn, obviously, Eicha and Sefer Yov and the Agadot relating to the Churban and the laws of Avilut, of mourning, and those sorts of things as well. But ordinary limud Torah, which brings one joy, one is not allowed to. That one needs to refrain from on Tisha B'Av the whole day. In fact, the general custom is even already from Chatzot or towards the afternoon of Erev Tisha B'Av that we start refraining from ordinary limud Torah. This year there's a question. It's machloket amongst the Achronim because Erev Tisha B'Av is Shabbat. So Shabbat afternoon is one still allowed to learn what they normally would. Because, as we said, still we don't have public signs of mourning on Shabbat, so it's a machloket achronim. There are those who say yes, and there are those who say no. But generally speaking, if one has a regular shiur that one goes to, or a regular seder that one has on Shabbat afternoon, it would be allowed to continue with that. Right. So that is in terms of Tisha B'Av, and whereas regarding Yom Kippur, he says it'll be Yom Kippur anot bilvad. Yom Kippur is just about fasting and the 5 inuyim, but it's a Yom Chag, and therefore we wear nice clothes and we sit on chairs and we sing and we greet each other, and we can learn Torah as much as we want if we have any time in between the davening. Okay, so let's talk briefly maybe about some of the less familiar halachot, the things that are unique to Tisha B'Av that we don't have on other fast days. I'm going to skip here to the section Shiur in this chapter, which is about Talmud Torah. Along with the 5 prohibitions that we've already mentioned on Tisha B'Av, that it is things that are related to this being a day of mourning. Just as an Aver cannot learn Torah during the Shiva, so too on Tisha B'Av we don't learn Torah, we don't learn ordinary Torah. We don't want to take our minds off the mourning that we're supposed to be concentrating on. And also, as the pasuk in Tehillim says, Pikudei Hashem Yishalim Mesamchei Lev, words of Torah gladden the heart. We don't want to gladden the heart on Tisha B'Av. Okay, for these purposes, also thinking about Divrei Torah is considered learning. כן. נכון. נכון, יפה. I'm saying how the word lev is hinted at in the first letter and the last letter of the Chumash. So he said also in terms of thinking, right, there's a big discussion in halakha whether hirhur, right, which is thinking, is considered the same as learning. For example, the question comes up, there's machloket regarding Birkat Torah that we say every day. Every morning we say Birkat Torah, and one is not allowed to learn until they've said Birkat Torah. So the question is, machloket amongst the Achronim, is one allowed to think about Divrei Torah before one has said Birkat Torah? So the best thing to do is say Birkat Torah first and then think about it. But he says for these purposes, Yehur is considered. Even The same thing, it is going to take our mind off the morning and it's going to make us happy. Is a mitzvah to learn on Tisha B'Av. It's not that we don't learn, but we learn about the things that are related to suffering, related to individual suffering, national suffering. These are appropriate for the day. But even the things that we learn, we don't go too in depth. We don't learn be'iyun on Tisha B'Av. Once you start delving very, very deeply, that is also going to make you happy. He says that if you're learning and then you come up with a chidush, you come up with a novel idea, and then also that brings you a certain amount of joy. So you don't have to forget your chidush, you don't have to not right. That's part of the way you learn, and that is fine. You need to write it down to remember it so that you won't lose it. That is allowed. Now the list essentially of the things that we can learn on Tisha B'Av, what is included? So in Tanakh, we have Megillat Eicha, obviously, which we read in Shiur, but we can also learn it. The chapters in Sefer Melachim, Divrei Yamim, talk about the Churban. וכן נבואות החורבן שהם רוב ספר ירמיהו, חלק מיחזקאל ומעט מישעיהו ותרי עשר. Okay, so you really have to know your Tanakh if you want to learn Tanakh on Tisha B'Av, where you can learn and where you can't. But essentially, the klal is we learn about the Churban, but we don't learn about the prakim of Nekama and of Kaf. We don't learn also those chapters dealing with the Puranot, dealing with the troubles that are going to come, the Churban, that are going to be against the other nations, against our enemies, because that's going to cause simcha. You can also learn Sefer Iyov, which, although that's not dealing with the Churban itself, but that deals with personal suffering, and that is also allowed. Okay, you write here also the words of the Tochacha in Parshat Bechukotai, Ki Tavo, and in Haazinu, and so that is in terms of Tanakh. There are also things in terms of Midrashim and Gemara and Halacha, etc. But we'll stop there for tonight.